Thanks for joining us here on Leading Edge. I'm Jeff Smith. Before we get going with today's program, I just want to take a minute to say our hearts and prayers are with Michigan State University and all the families and people affected by this week's mass shooting. It just so happens the same night that happened, we were learning and reacting to a violent episode to our north. We were also remembering one of Toledo's most violent and tragic days. Many have never forgotten Friday, February 13th, 1998. On that day, in the middle of the afternoon, a Toledo man went on a murderous rampage in what many called a trail of terror. Today, we share our interview with two of the men who responded and what they remember about how the whole day unfolded.
It was confusing. There was a lot of things happening at the same time, and got to give Bob Case credit for the foresight that he had about going to the hospital and checking that area after the fireman had been shot. You know, it was strange, but just north of us here, there's a sporting goods shop that's owned by Lieutenant Cook's family, and I've been up there and I've talked to them. I've met part of his family that had to be living down here. But yeah, it was kind of confusing, and then the call came in about Brandy being shot over there pretty close to the precinct. And I had been in the office doing my administrative stuff when the shift changed, when everything was happening. And when that shooting came in, I figured, well, you know, I need to get back out there and start getting a handle on this. It sounded like it was the command on the scene were doing a job with it, but the scenes were so far spread. Mm-hmm. And I got in the car and I headed over to where that shooting was, and then Bob jumped that blue van there at the hospital, and it all evolved from there. But yeah, there were so many things happening and so many strings being pulled at the same time. It just like I said, Bob was the man of the hour then. He had the foresight to go where someone could be going to finish the job.
Mm-hmm. And that's where he was spotted, correct?
Right.
Yeah. Bob was over. He drove by the hospital and he saw the van had pulled into a parking lot, into a driveway just across from the emergency room. It looked like Chapo wanted to set up another ambush for when the folks that were injured did get to the hospital. So Bob really saved a lot more damage happening that day by being sharp enough to think ahead that one step.
Well, you touched on it. You said there's not a Friday the 13th that goes by that you don't reflect about this day, now 25 years ago. But Joe, I'll start with you. Talk a little bit about that lead up to, I guess, how this whole thing ended. And you've got rush hour traffic. You're weaving. I mean, yeah. Toledo police officers are weaving in and out of traffic, trying to keep up with Chappell. As if I remember correctly, he was shooting outside of a car window back at officers during this chase. Yeah. And then it all culminates right there. One of the busiest intersections in Toledo, right there at Monroe and Secor.
Yeah. So again, like Jack said, you know, Bob Case did an excellent job. You know, he thought ahead. You know, and that's I was chasing what had happened. Mm-hmm. Bob was thinking ahead what was going to happen, mm-hmm. and that made the difference because when he saw him, and then when he took off after him, I believe he was started shooting at Bob as well, and then the pursuit was on. Again, afternoon traffic, West Toledo. I remember just trying to get around the traffic.
Friday night?
Yeah. And at that point, after the life squad had gotten shot and Lieutenant Cook had gotten shot from the fire department, we knew he was heading southbound on Jackman, so I just started trying to find him on Jackman Road. And at that point, he had turned off on a side street, and that's where he tried to carjack Brandy. And unfortunately, shot her right in the back with that shotgun. When that came out, then we knew, this was going to end, and it was going to end in a gunfight. That's just how this was going to end. I remember I took the shotgun out of the rack. I put it right on my passenger side seat, so I knew as soon as I saw him, as soon as it stopped, that's what I was going to use on him. And then as the pursuit kicked up, everybody just kind of started closing in on them there, Monroe and Secor. I think Bob actually did a little bit of a pit maneuver on them, and then put him out.
Spun him out, right?
Yeah, put him into that gas station parking lot there. And then, as I was getting into the gas station parking lot, my car had been running so hard that my brakes were so fried on my police car that my pedal went pretty much all the way down to the floor. And I remember kind of shooting past everybody right there. And then I got out, and as soon as I got out, then the other officers opened fire on him as he exited the van with the shotgun.
Jack, talk about getting to the scene, that last moment, and what you remember.
Yeah, what the way it worked with me, like I said, I had headed over to the scene where Brandy had been shot, and Bob announced a pursuit. Well, I jumped on the expressway there at one of the exits, and as I came up on Monroe Street, I exited, and as luck would have it, I came in right behind Bob in the pursuit. So we got up there just before we got to Secor, and Bob pulled that pit on him and spun him out. And Bob ended up in front of the van, and I ended up perpendicular to it on the driver's side. I saw the shotgun coming up. I exited my car. There was another civilian vehicle that had been run off the road. It was off to the side there. I just saw her out of the corner of my eye, but I didn't see anyone in it. I found out later that the lady was hiding under the steering wheel when all this was happening. But I exited my vehicle, and I'm advancing toward the van, and I fired, I believe, 7-8 shots as he was bringing the shotgun up to bear on Bob. Then I moved to the rear of the van, and I heard another shot went off, and I remember yelling, "Now see fire!" And Chappell had fallen about half out of the vehicle, face down, and the shotgun was still in his hand. So I moved up on him, checked the van just very quickly, make sure that no one else was in it, and I pulled the shotgun from his hand and slid it over out of the way. And then we just kind of, from then on, it was just a matter of containing the scene, putting up the evidence tape. I remember Mike Bell showed up, and he's coming towards where Chappell was laying, and I didn't want anyone in the crime scene. I yelled at the chief. I said, you can't come in here. And he said, well, I'm an EMT. I can check him for it. And, so the Chief Bell came in. Says, yeah, there's nothing we can do for him. And then he backed on out of the scene. So we started making the calls in for the detectives, to the coroner, and trying to get things together as far as making sure that no one else got into the scene, no one else got hurt.
Yeah.
From then on, it was just a matter of procedure of handling the scene like another crime scene. And we still, at that time, didn't know the full extent of all this, everything that happened, who all had been hurt. I didn't anyway, because I'd come into it kind of late.
Stay right there. When we come back, coming up next, we discuss the police work that was done that day and also the kids who survived the attack. Welcome back. Glad you're spending some time with us. Our conversation with Captain Heffernan and former Toledo Police Chief Jack Smith continues now, and how they kept that day from being worse than it was.
Well, it was a lot of good men, fire department, police department, and everyone else involved, doing exactly what they were trained to do. We responded as we should on a very confusing situation. I was extremely proud of the people that were working for me, the way that fell out. Like I was the watch commander there at Northwest at the time, and it was all my people that were involved. And I couldn't have been more proud. Quality people do a quality job, and that's true then and it's true now. You have to find, and I was listening to the thing about the thing in Memphis. You have to find very qualified people, train them well, supervise them well, and you'll get a good response. You'll get a good ending.
As a new officer, how do you answer that? I mean, how do you answer that question 25 years later?
Yeah, I was just lucky. I was lucky to work under some very good command. I had, Jack Smith, I think, was probably the best watch commander I ever had. And I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot from my fellow officers and the sergeants. And we worked as a team. right? So everybody had their roles, everybody knew what to do. And when you're in a critical situation like that, kind of revert back to your training, and everybody just did everything they could to get that guy that day. We knew that if we let him continue, it was going to end up in
more loss of life,
more carnage. He wasn't going to go down easily. But and one thing that kind of struck me too is just even at the scene of the shooting, just the the professionalism of everybody there at that time. And Jack, I don't know if you remember this or not, but when I walked up there, you turned to me and you said, "Did you shoot?" And I said, "No, I didn't shoot." And he said, "Okay." He said, "There's an injury accident in Monroe and Sylvania. And all crews are out of service, and we need to get over there. Could you run over there?" And I thought to myself, wow, to know that this was happening as well.
Yeah.
While all this other
Being able
stuff
to
happened,
process that.
yeah, I was just like, I was just really, really impressed. I was able to know that there was other things that were going on in the city as well at that time. And so I went over there, and it was a kind of a serious injury accident. Yeah. So
that's always stuck with you.
Yeah, it always stuck with me. Yeah.
Jack, talk a little bit about the one thing I was amazed by is, when we get after the fact, when the puzzle is put together, do you look back? Obviously, you couldn't put everything together that day, but when you heard of what was happening after the fact, when you Monday morning quarterback this, do you just rack your brain and think, my God, how in God's name could there be that evil in our town, and how could something like this play out in Toledo, Ohio?
Well, I got to say, it's a fact that there's evil in the world, and we're always going to have it. It doesn't matter where you're at. You can be in the safest place in the world, and bad things can happen. What we have to learn from it is that to take a step back, all the way back to when this started with the stalking of Vivian Morris there. There's things that could have been done earlier with her employers and with the intervention, but it was drug on too long. It got to the point where Chapel just lost control over it. He was a troubled individual. He really was, and maybe a little earlier intervention could have gotten him the help that he severely needed before it got to that point. But I guess it's a matter of recognizing the warning signs, the red flags and stuff, and we all need to do a better job of that.
Joe, what do you guys, if I get the opportunity to speak with Ashley, the young girl who was 10, now 35, what would you say to her now 25 years later?
Well, I'm glad she survived, and I hope she uses her life to be a person that can bring out that message that you can survive something like this, and be a vessel for good. Somebody that survived an evil encounter and is doing something with her life in tribute to her mother.
Which we say of all victims of violence. And Jack, anything you wanted to add as far as the kids are concerned, still here in the Toledo area and still living their lives?
It's just that they and the other families involved, they're always in my prayers. It was tragic. It was an incredible load for those two kids to carry the rest of their lives, to see something like that happen. And like I say, they're always in the prayers.
Stay there. When we return, a special guest talking about trauma, recognizing it, and treating it. Once again, we appreciate you spending some time with us here. Want to introduce to you today Dr. Kristie Jenkins joining us from the Family and Child Abuse Prevention Center here in Toledo. You and I were talking as we were watching some of the interviews with the first responders going back 25 years to this. And I did get a chance to sit down with Ashley Morris, who, as I said, she has been holding on to this for a long time. She's not alone in situations like this, trauma, violence, dealing with this. How do people diagnose themselves, know that, yes, I'm holding on to some baggage, and then we'll talk about the response.
Yeah, so often folks will feel nervous, anxious, worried. They'll feel depressed, so they won't want to get out of bed. They will lose interest in things that used to bring them joy. And so you notice a marked diminishing of just your wherewithal, your happiness, your wellness. And so I would say when you feel that way, it's time to go seek help.
Yeah, is it depression? Is it something else? Because one of the things that came out in our conversation was there was real anxiety, right? There were social dynamics that were making her anxious, still to this day make her anxious.
Yeah, so I mean, it sounds like to me as a clinician that there could be some post-traumatic stress disorder there. And seeing this situation unfold, I mean, it would be very likely. And that's a normal trauma response. And that's what I want folks to know, that you're having a very normal response to an abnormal situation.
Yeah.
And there's so much stigma around mental health or seeking help or those kind of things, but anyone would need some help after such a traumatic incident like that.
Does it affect adults differently than it does children, or even children growing into adults? How are they processing it still to this point?
Right, so some folks would say that children are very resilient, and so they have the ability to kind of forget or, you know, put it in the past or those kind of things. But what I find is that for folks who don't process this trauma, it comes out in other ways. And so they might isolate, or they might grow up and be angry about things because they've never fully processed what happened to them.
So we talk about the diagnosis part of it. Let's move on to treatment. What is the treatment? How do they start? What is the first step? Because her sitting, I told her, and I'm not a clinician, but in our sitting down and having that interview, she was very emotional. She didn't want her face to be shown on camera. But that was a first step, was it not? To talk about it?
Definitely. Talking about it, and that's why treatment is so incredibly important. So at the Children's Advocacy Center, because we see a lot of traumatized children, we use trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a treatment modality. And so what we do is really normalize the trauma, that you are having a very normal response to an abnormal situation. We put in place safety plans, we do coping skills, and at the end of it all, the child would write a trauma narrative. And so they would pick the first time, the worst time, the last time, a piece of the trauma, because you don't want to relive everything all over again. But it really is helpful to get that out. And for some folks, especially adults, having a trauma-based therapist or going and having EMDR, and really just, because there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And what it says is that all of this trauma is stored in our body. So like I talked about, we push this down, we don't talk about it. It comes out in other ways. And so with EMDR, what they do is really kind of focus on how the body is processing the trauma.
We've just got a little bit of time left, but I did want to talk about the animosity toward taking that first step. Even nervousness, right? The fear. How do you get past that? Who is the person that needs to lead it? Is it the person suffering the trauma? Is it somebody in their life?
It can be either or. I think that the person who is suffering the trauma, going and finding help is really important, because if somebody forces you into it, you might not have the same buy-in. So really putting yourself out there, and I know for my agency in particular, we have lots of folks at the forefront when you make that first appointment that will wrap around you, and we have the services not only for the mental health, but maybe you need case management. Maybe you need housing, you need food stamps. There's other things that you need, because you can't really get to that mental health level until those basic needs are met as well.
I was going to say, what if they don't have that supporting unit around them? What if it is just them going to bat for themselves?
Right. So, I mean, you call the agency, you have an intake, you come in, and right now you would meet with me. So I would do a diagnostic assessment with you, figure out what your needs are, and then we would find someone to wrap around you at the agency.
And when you have these conversations, I mean, Are those first days the toughest?
I would say sometimes yes, but I find most often folks come in and they finally disclose and get it out, and there's just a relief.
Yeah.
Like I finally got to tell somebody and somebody understood. They weren't, because in these super traumatic situations, they might be fearful, like, I don't want to put this on you.
Right.
I don't want to have this change who you are, but knowing that that's what we deal with every single day. And there's nothing you could say that would shock us or scare us or make us feel differently about you.
Yeah. And in Ashley and her brother Adam's situation, witnessing the death of their mother 25 years ago, and then in just the last couple of weeks for one of them to come forward, what does that say to you?
It says that it's time. It's time to get the help that they've probably suffered in silence for 25 years, and they don't have to.
Yeah.
They can truly get healing from this.
Well, I hope our words, and as you and I spoke on the phone and just said, when you have these conversations, you hope that just one person, two people, maybe hears something and thinks, okay, I don't need to be scared anymore.
Yeah, and I would say that for some folks, they see this and they say, oh my God, this is such a huge situation. My situation is not like this. You still need help.
Yeah.
You know, just because your trauma wasn't this ginormous affair, you still need help.
Doctor, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Really good insight. We'll be right back right after this. We appreciate you spending some time with us here on this edition of Leading Edge, taking a look back once again, such an eventful day 25 years ago this past week. And once again, as Dr. Jenkins was saying, if you or somebody you know has experienced trauma, taking that first step is so important, and there are resources out there. My name is Jeff Smith. From all of us here at WTOL, have a great rest of your day.